Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
You're listening to Tony Graham on Binjang 91.5, and today I'm talking to Matthew Dickerson because he's had the subcommittee meetings, if you'd like to call them that, and you have some really exciting news about that, I believe, when it comes to that, Matthew Dickerson.
Well, exciting news, that might be debatable. I've got news about it. Whether or not it's exciting or not, I'll leave that to each individual listener to make that decision.
Yes.
But one of the topics of discussion, this was at our Infrastructure Planning and Environment Committee, was in relation to Mitchell Creek on Saxa Road, and obviously there's been a fair bit of discussion around that crossing there, the Coomera crossing. Obviously at the moment that culvert's blown apart, we know about that. People are well and truly aware of that. Obviously, what we're focused on is the repair and getting that back up and running. And that was what came to our committees last night, was where do we go? They needed to make sure there was some direction from councillors to give the staff direction on what to do next. There's been some discussion around what should happen, but again, that's just discussion, Tony. As we know, a council resolution is what directs the staff on where to go. And there are a few points put forward, a few options, or three options in particular put forward about how we might do it. But there was some discussion from some councils about effectively not doing that. And I'll go back and give you a bit of the history on that. When you've got a culvert in place like there is there now, when you have damage from a flood, you can repair it back to the same standard as it was, and the state government effectively gives you the money to cover that. So the cost to council just to put back what's already there is about nothing. So it's about $470,000 to do it, but we would typically get that money back. But we've already talked to the community and we've said we don't think it's good enough to put back the same that's there now. And one of the things that we've talked about with the state government, and this has been a common theme across state government, is the whole concept of betterment. Why would we put back what's already there, knowing that there'll be another flood come along, it'll be underwater, that crossing will be cut off, and then there'll be damage done to it, and then there'll be more repair costs? Wouldn't we be better off doing the repair properly, putting a bridge in effectively, and doing it properly so that the next time a flood comes along, people can keep using that particular crossing, and more to the point, it's not going to be damaged, so you're not going to keep incurring these ongoing costs. Again, some councillors weren't of that view. Some councillors said, well, we like the idea of it costing us nothing. We should just fix up what's there and have a nice day and move on. But again, I think that would be unfair to the community that lives in that area. And this is an important road as well, Tony. As you know, it's a regional road. So there's not just the traffic that's the local traffic. There are people that come from outside our LGA who use that. The decision that was made by councillors in the end, and when I say decision, this is a recommendation from the committee. The final decision will be made at the council meeting in 2 weeks' time. But the three options we had in how to replace that culvert with a bridge was a modular bridge, or with box culverts, or with a design construction tender. And councillors threw out the idea of the modular bridge. We didn't think that was going to be sensible. And so it then came down to the box culvert or the design and construct. Fair bit of difference in cost between those two. The box culvert was probably about $1.65 million. A little bit more roadworks need to be performed with a box culvert, which might cost a little bit more money, and about a 54-week construction time on that. If we go design and construct, the estimation was $2.7 million and about 57 weeks for that, a little bit less in terms of the roadworks that's needed with that particular process. So in the end, councillor said, let's go out with a tender process for both a design and construct and a box culvert, so either one or the other, but we'll accept tenders for either of those two processes to be able to get that happening. And that construction time frame, again, a little bit over a year. It'll take a few months to go through that tender process. So it's probably 16 months before that will be completed, but it will be completed with a bridge or a box culvert will give you the same outcome. In other words, that will then withstand a 1 in 100 year flood, and that will be able to keep being used during that flood process. And also, it's not going to be something that's going to be needing repairs. We estimate about a 100-year lifetime of a bridge. So all good news. The time frame, though, is probably the most frustrating part of that. It's a fairly lengthy time frame before that'll be completed.
Okay. A lot of the listeners will also be wanting to know what the progress is in relation to the low-level bridge. Any word on that yet?
Are you talking about this particular culvert that's in place now?
No, sorry. I'm talking about on the Macquarie there, on the Macquarie River at the Bell intersection in Monteviers, the Duke of Wellington Bridge. I'm just wondering if there's been any progress with that.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I understand where you're coming from now. No progress at the moment. Still the same process. We're waiting for the final engineering designs or recommendations about any damage that might have been done to that bridge. And once we've got those engineering recommendations, then make a decision around what we might do. If I can just mention, on the Comabella crossing that I've just talked about there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
The $2.7 million that I've talked about, what we'll be doing, so that's going to come out of ratepayers' funds mostly, but what we're trying to do is go back to the state government and we'll be asking for betterment funding. So we're not trying to do that. We will do that. Whether or not we're successful with betterment funding for some or all of that is up in the air, but we've committed to making that happen. Whether or not we get the betterment funding, we think it's reasonable to get the betterment funding, but we've committed to doing that regardless. And when I say committed, again, it's a recommendation from the committee, but that seems to be where councillors are at in terms of going forward with that. So, yes, we'd like to get the money from the state government, but we're going to go ahead regardless.
Okay. Now, what's happening with the swimming pools? There's been a bit of development there, hasn't there?
Well, you've got the Aquatic Centre Working Party, which is a working party for the 3 aquatic centres that we have. You may call them swimming pools, but the official name of them aquatic centres. So we've got
like
those.
Everybody else.
We've got those
except for you, Matthew.
Exactly. They're in Wellington, Geary and Dubbo. Now, as you would know from previous discussions that we've had, there's been a contract let for those 3 centres, and that's been won by Belgravia, and they manage pools across Australia and New Zealand. And so the latest Aquatic Centre Working Party committee meeting was held, and that was quite productive. I wasn't at that meeting, but that was quite productive in terms of the discussions around that. But the people that were at that, the swimming clubs, the councillors, the council staff, all very impressed with Belgravia and all very excited about what Belgravia might be able to do, having someone who is very specialised in the way they deal with swimming pools, the way they manage swimming pools. And I think there's a lot of hope that we'll end up with some great outcomes for those 3 pools across the 3 areas.
Okay. So what's this I hear, Matthew, about you blowing up the res, or is that inflating it or something?
Well, I'd love to inflate it even further, but there's already been some inflation of it. The res, of course, the Central West Orana Renewable Energy Zone, that is a very important part of Wellington's future. In the past, when that was first put forward, November 2021, that was approved as a 3 gigawatt res. Now, we've been very keen. We've been meeting with various government officials, both staff and ministers, and really excited about this opportunity. I do see this, Tony, as something that will be good for Dubbo, but transformational for Wellington. This is a once-in-a-multi-generation opportunity to completely transform Wellington, and I'm very excited by that. The government's recognised how keen the community has been and how good the community and council has been to get on with this. And on the back of that and increased future energy needs, they're putting forward a proposal to change the declaration of this res from a 3 gigawatt res to a 4.5 gigawatt res initially with stage 1, but then with stage 2 to change that into a 6 gigawatt res. And what's exciting about that is that that's doubling the investment for this res. We're talking about potentially $10 billion in private investment. Over 5,000 jobs Energy Co is suggesting for this, but we've already done our figures and we think there's over 6,000 jobs needed for this and some other projects around the Dubbo Regional Council, LGO. So all good news, Tony. And everyone that I can talk to at state level, I've been in Canberra this week meeting with some officials from Canberra and including some ministers. I keep talking about the REAC, and the REAC hopefully will be something that really will transform Wellington as well. This is the Renewables Education and Activity Centre. And I look at things like in parks, the dish there, they have 100,000 visitors a year. In the Snowy Mountain scheme, you've got over in Cooma, the Hydro Snowy Mountains Visitor Centre, or Discovery Centre it's called over there, 150,000 visitors a year, 150 schools go through. These are things that will keep the economies of those communities ticking along. I've got this plan for this REAC outside Wellington, maybe on One Tree Hill there, for example, outside Wellington. Imagine 100,000 visitors coming to Wellington each year to look at the REAC, to learn about the renewables area. in addition to all these jobs, 15 years of construction we're going to have with this whole renewables area, this is really going to transform Wellington if we get it right. And that's our job as a council to make sure we seize this opportunity.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Matthew, for your time today.
Always my pleasure talking to you, Tony. Hopefully your listeners are always very interested in what's happening with council and what's happening in their community.
I'm sure they are. And we've been listening to the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matthew Dickerson, on Binjang 91.5.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.